I don't know what to talk about today, or that's not true. I didn't want to talk about any of the things I have listed to talk about on these daily videos, but I don't know what else to talk about. And so I almost didn't do this. See, this is the downside to filming and trying to post on the same day. And I am probably the person that a lot of creators talk about and coaches talk about that you should not be like. But honestly, this is what has been working. I'm not saying it's working effortlessly, because there are days when I don't want to do this at all. Especially because a lot of what I want to do is focused in the kitchen. Filming a recipe, but I want you to know that filming recipes are a whole day thing, and it takes time to set up the plan for the recipe filming, to film it, and then to edit. Those are three separate things, and we only have so many days in a week, hours in a day, and by the time I don't know how people do all of this. Of course I know. You'll say batch content, or other people will say batch content, like spend 2 hours on batch. I honestly wish it was doable for me. Batching content is not something I enjoy. Hate it, absolutely. More than doing this. And so I'll continue to do this and complain or talk about the downside of it. And maybe, will that mean that I don't reach all the milestones that everybody is chasing when doing these videos on YouTube? Maybe, but at this point, it's not that I don't care, it's that I'm working where I'm at. And where I'm at is getting into the habit of these daily videos. Now, I am at video number, I think this might be video 67. It has not been 67 days of videos, 67 straight days, because I took a break. And I came back and decided I was going to do 100 videos instead. And I'm at 67. What will happen at the end of the 100 videos? I do not know. What I do know is that this has helped me kind of identify what my lane is. But also in doing this, I've given myself permission to veer out of the lane, or that one box that I have put myself in, which tends to happen because all the YouTube strategists talk about, you need to talk about this. And I just like to veer sometimes. And today's one of those days. I had no idea what we're rambling about, but I will say that I felt like just coming on, no notes prepared other than I stated this to a friend. I was texting her and I said, I have not made today's video yet, and I don't know what to talk about. And then I followed up and said, and this is the downside to trying to film and post on the same day. And she's like, maybe you should talk about that. And so that's what I'm doing. Now, what makes this hard to do is, or what would make this easier to do is if I filmed these earlier in the day. The problem is, earlier in the day is for me time. The moment I start doing things like this is work. The moment I switch to this, it interrupts the me time. Or before the intended time, it interrupts the me time. By the time I get around to filming, there are other things that are more important than filming. Filming becomes the thing I do, and after all of that has been done. And I've put it there for a reason, because there are more important things. And because this is important as well, I've committed, or I've been forcing myself to do it, even when I'm tired, even when it's late, even when I'm not sure what I'm going to say, even when it feels like I am reading from a script, because a lot of times I put notes, I write down notes to say, and the way my brain works is I typically write out what I want to say if I want things to flow. Of course, I'll ad-lib here and there to prevent me from finding all kinds of tangents. And when I write it out, I'm better able to retain what it is that I need to say. I might still, look at the ceiling, have my hands doing all of that with with the arms and the breaking up of the train of thought. But sometimes when I do that, it sounds very robotic, even though those are words coming from me that I put down on paper. Sometimes it's me just saying, I am just writing this because I need to put out this video, or because I need to stay on this topic. And I want to be that person, but I'm also not just that person. If you're neurodivergent, you might get this. If not, maybe you're just somebody who has experienced that and you get that. If that's the case, let me know. And you're on YouTube or trying to put your videos out on YouTube, let me know, because we are interesting beings with different things happening in our lives. Now, I'm not somebody that's going to share every detail, but the frustrations of doing something like this, I want to talk about as well. I could talk about, all the things that doing 65, 67 videos or 66 videos, this is the 67th one, have taught me, but who gives a shit? Like, do you really care what they have taught me? You just want to know why you should tune into this video. Maybe you're looking for entertainment, maybe you're looking for something to connect with. And maybe you do want some kind of recipe or meal idea or a way to think about, building your meals. Maybe you do want that. And if that's what you want, then yes, this is a channel for you. But you're not only going to get that. You're also going to get me in my humanness. And I think this is a lesson for you when you consume content of other people. When you tend to, from what I've seen, folks tend to box people in. And this is the thing that they've shared, especially in short form, like on Instagram and, as a matter of fact, whichever social media platform it is, people view you as this one thing because you're always only talking about this one thing. So when you deviate from it and you're no longer talking about it, or you don't talk about the thing that they know you for, they go elsewhere, and that's fine. But in addition to that, they take issue with the fact that you no longer talk about it, or you don't talk about it all the time. And I think that's so unfair, in the sense that the same way they experience different things and they change their minds about things and they have different interests, that's the same thing with content creators. They have different interests. We experience life. We have other things to say. It's like saying to a basketball player, just dribble and shut up. Like, first of all, you can go elsewhere. Second of all, that's just so mean. Like, why would you set your fingers to type that to somebody and you're getting it for free? Like, the only thing it's costing you is your time, and you can take that elsewhere. You're getting it for free. It's like those people who visit bloggers, food bloggers' websites, and then come on the internet and complain about the fact that they can't just get the recipe. If you want just the recipe, you know what to do. But to set your fingers to type an epistle about all that's wrong, for providing free information, for providing insight, for sharing stories, there is just something special about that type of person, and not in a good way. Like, are you that miserable? So I don't know where I was going with that, other than to say that me and my humanness did not know what to talk about tonight. I'm coming on to talk about whatever this is. And it's interesting to me that we have become so accustomed to performing for people. That's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to be performing for anybody. I don't want to have to over-explain myself to anybody. As somebody who used to do that type of thing, over-explaining was my way of trying to be heard, or maybe liked, or maybe prevent the uncomfortable response that might be them not liking what I had to say or them being in disagreement with what I had to say. But that's no more, friend. Context is good, context is important, but also, I mean, you can come with your, what was I going to say about that? I don't remember. All of that to say that we are multi-layered people. And the more we can embrace that about people, when we come on YouTube, when you go on somebody's platform, it's the easier time you will have connecting. Because a lot of people talk about they want to connect. And the problem with that is people want performance and then call it connection. As a 46-year-old woman, done enough of that in my earlier years, and I refuse to do that anymore. I invite you to examine whether or not you're doing the same thing and possibly start making some changes. Like, you don't need to over explain, we don't need to overshare. If we're misunderstood, honestly, sometimes that's just going to happen, and you can choose to either try to make somebody understand you or recognize that they are where they are and they see things from through a particular lens. It's not your job to change the lens that they're seeing things through. You can only live in your truth, provide any context that needs to be given if they're willing to hear it and if they're open to hearing it. But you have no control over what somebody else is going to interpret something as, see it as. You can only account for yourself, what you say, what you think, how you respond. That's all within your control. That's all within my control. Like, and the older I get, or the more things happen, the more I find myself in some situations, is the more I realize that the only thing I have control over is me and somebody not liking what I have to say, even me saying something as a way of, whether I'm asked for the opinion or I'm sharing a feeling or an opinion, and somebody not liking it is not my responsibility. What I will say to that is, if my intention is not to harm, and usually that's never my intention, to harm, but it does cause harm, it is then my responsibility to acknowledge that, provided that I'm aware that it does cause harm. And if I can acknowledge that, that is all I have control over. Acknowledge and then opt to do differently, opt to approach it differently, opt to do better. So even though I didn't intend for harm to be caused, harm is still the outcome. And so what I do after that speaks to whether or not I'm willing to, listen, learn, and make change. When other people do the same thing to me, I will attempt to, provide context, not necessarily to explain myself, but as adults, we want to have open conversation. Provide that context in hopes that I am understood, but there's always a chance that I'm not going to be understood, and I have to be okay with that. I'm getting very philosophical, but it all ties together. Me not knowing what to talk about, me showing up on YouTube here, still uncomfortable. I think about all the ways in which I'm trying to put content out, and I should be sticking to this, or I need to go and film today and put this out, and I need to try and hurry up and get these hours. And as much as how I want to get these monetization hours, I'm going to stick to the plan of one, being consistent with doing these videos, two, not narrowing, but zoning in on the thing that I can talk about, the thing that I can share, the thing that I can teach, the thing I can eventually help people with, getting clearer on what that is, how that looks like, which is why I'm doing YouTube, and getting better at communicating my thoughts without necessarily rambling and the arms and the ums. And that happens too a lot. And I am getting more comfortable with it being cringe or seeming to be cringe and being okay with this. This video is, I feel, is a cringe one. I'm also not going to edit anything out of this because this is the reality. And I want to share that reality because too many people are performing. Too many people are not sharing them real selves. And it is sad. But also, you don't have to share everything. And I understand that. But if what you're sharing and who you are two different things, that's going to become obvious. So I never want to give the impression that I'm putting on just to land in front of people, just to get views. Views are great, but if I'm not authentic in what I'm sharing, then how great are those views? Because as we talked to somebody and she said that she went to something and an influencer was there and you could tell that she hated every moment of being there and the thing she was there for. And it reminded her of how easy it is to build a business, to perform because the metrics were right, as opposed to it being something that you enjoy and find joy in and can step away from or have healthy boundaries such that it remains something worth putting your time into. So even if you are chasing the money, it should still be something that you feel satisfied with putting out versus something you hate showing up for, but it's the thing that built your empire. It's the thing that got you to be an influencer. It's the thing that made you popular. It's the thing that got you all the views, the deals, all of those things. And you're miserable. Like, that to me makes no sense. I'm not saying that folks won't find themselves needing to make some tough choices and probably do things they do not want to do. That's honestly, I think, part of the human experience, but part of, I don't even want to call it being resilient. I hate the use of that word. Hate it. But building tough skin maybe, or building a backbone maybe. But it should not be, I think it should not be costing you peace. It shouldn't be costing your mental health. It shouldn't be costing you your soul. And you can tell when that's happening with a lot of people. Well, I think you can tell. Well, I can tell with some. It's not obvious with others, with everybody I mean. Because people often only share the highlight reel of their lives. You know, look at, as a way to say, look at me, I'm achieving this. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, because of course there are people who aspire to be like that or aspire to achieve the success in a certain way, but it can't cost you your peace, man. And peace is a valuable thing. And what does peace look like? That's going to be different for everybody. And I find that myself, anytime I find myself comparing to others, especially like those who are earning money on YouTube or those whose businesses are seemingly thriving and they're sharing all their profit, their revenue metrics and successes and all of that, it's very easy to say, well, I suck, or I'm definitely not doing well, I'm not successful because I'm comparing myself to them. And that happens. Like, comparison is something that will naturally happen, but you have to actively work on keeping your eyes on your own paper, keeping your eyes on your own plate, because you don't know what's happening in somebody else's home. You don't understand. You don't know what's happening in somebody else's business. And I don't know if you stay on, if you follow the threads or the post enough, for the threads or X or wherever, and you will see people talk about, some people at least, like just share that it's not as great as they made it seem, or they weren't making the money that people thought they were, and all the ways in which their businesses were hanging on by a thread. That sounds like an exhausting way to live, an exhausting way to run a business. So I've chosen this time around, because believe it or not, I'm a multipassionate person, which means I've done many things. I've lived many lives at this point, and I used to think something was wrong with that because it seemed like I couldn't settle on something. But I've long since stopped doing that and see it more as a blessing, as in an ability to try new things, try different things. I'm not afraid of trying. I'm afraid of failing, or I have been afraid of failing. That's an entirely different conversation. I am the girl that will try so many things, so much so that I can have shiny object syndrome, where this looks interesting, I want to try it. One of my not personality traits, but something that's very common with me is I get interested in something and think suddenly I need to immerse myself in it, and then possibly maybe this could become something that I turn into a business. I want to take every idea and run with it. I'm not that great with execution, I will say this. And this is something that I have been working on, actively working on, to execute on the ideas that need to be executed. But first I had to understand that not all your ideas need to be put out in the world, Shanique. Some of them are just for you to see a possibility. Some of them are just to help you dream. But am I great at dreaming? Am I great at coming up with ideas? Some of them are just to get you to think. Doesn't mean they have to be put forward. They don't all have to come to fruition. And on the topic of ideas, I often think all of these ideas need to come true or be put into the world all at once. If you know, you know, and that can be a downfall. But being somebody who has had multiple interests and therefore have connections in multiple types of groups and different settings, I find that to be something that's unique, because it means that I wouldn't call myself a chameleon. I would say that I know how to adapt. Knowing how to adapt has been, or is, I think, a superpower of mine, because pivoting, nobody knows how to pivot like me. Do I do it quickly? No, because sometimes I'm married to my ideas, because I birthed them, and so I feel like I need to follow this through all the way through, versus recognizing when it is not bringing forth the thing that it needs to bring forth, or it's failing. I stay a much longer with it than I probably need to. So me and ideas are great. Ideation is my number one strength on the Clifton strength scale. Ideation. I wish I had a job that could just pay me to produce ideas and make somebody else execute them. If you know of any of those jobs, I will gladly put my hat in the ring for that job. Because ideas I can come up with from sun up to sundown. I'm slow on the execution. But also it takes me a while to act because of how I need to process things. I'm not an act first. That's not true. I was going to say I'm not an act first, ask questions later. I asked a whole lot of questions, probably too many questions before so much as take the first step. So I've had to work on not doing that. Working on changing some of the ways that your brain operates takes a lot of effort, and I'm unmedicated as somebody with ADHD. So yeah, it takes great effort to corral the brain. It takes great effort to keep focus. Oh Lord, keep focus. Yeah, it is a challenge. Focus is concentration, and focus is a challenge. On the flip side, when there's hyperfocus, that is its own storm. So there's inability to concentrate, to pay attention, and then there's the hyperfocus. Opposite ends of the spectrum, equally dangerous. For me anyway. And that just means that I've thinking hard about things, in processing things is where I was going with that. In processing things, it makes me slow to respond, because oftentimes my thoughts move much faster than I'm able to articulate, whether it's writing it down or speaking it. And so that's one of the reasons I think I take a long time to act. On the flip side, sometimes I act without thinking of consequences or haven't thought it through completely. But mostly, yeah, haven't thought it through completely, will act, get burned, and then I go back to not doing that. Or act it fail and think, oh, it's trash, I'm trash, we are never doing that again. It is quite an interesting thing to experience. And then trying to run a business, which feels like a fail 99% of the time, makes it even harder. So at which point you're like, why try if all these things fail? Like, at which point is it going to turn? At which point is my inability to focus going to change, unless I get on medication? At which point is it going to happen for me the way it happens for everybody else, or seems like it happens for everybody else? And when this question pops up, I go back to what I said earlier, that I can't compare where I'm at with anybody else. It's going to take the time it takes for myself. It's going to take the time it takes for you to see the result. Like, I've been seeing all these threads about, Gemini. I'm Gemini, June Gemini to be exact. And seeing all these astrological threads about, things are going to be this in August, things are going to take off. And I'm asked, from June I've been seeing this. And I'm asking, like, when is that? Like, is there like a ETA on that? Because things are like not moving. Things feel like, if anything, are just absolutely slow, not going anywhere, dead still to be exact. So all these astrology reads and whatnot, I've stopped reading them because they have felt more like pandering, felt more like, entertainment than anything else. And this is not to say that I believe 100% or I'm going to cast all my aspirations on a particular reading that somebody has put out there randomly. It wasn't geared necessarily towards me. I'm just grouping myself into one of the categories that they have identified. So I'm not hinging my life on that. But at the same time, I'm like, are these things even worth paying attention to? Why do I do that? It is so funny to me the way my brain works, and in talking to somebody else whose brain works similarly, it's always fascinating that what I thought was odd, or there are a lot of things I thought everybody else experienced only to find out they did not. There are a lot of things I thought was wrong with me because I thought a particular way or didn't think a particular way, or I saw things in a certain way when most people didn't. So what that meant was staying quiet, because people would be, I'm the kind of person who asks why and dig deep, dig deep, dig deep, dig deep. And oftentimes felt like I was a bother because I kept asking that. And, you know, it used to feel like I was asking, people thought I was asking to be annoying. And when I recognized that people got that way, I would stop asking. So me being quiet, it was normal as a kid or when I was younger, because it became better to observe and draw my own conclusions than to ask, because I wouldn't get the patience from others to hear my ask and answer as a way of giving me the information to appease the part of my brain that needed to understand. Instead, it became annoyance, and so that taught me to observe folks more, but also not to be very trusting of people because of that reaction. Because it's one or two things happen. People either get annoyed or get defensive. And it's something I recognize that not everyone is open to what may seem like me being intrusive in asking why or digging deeper. So I've developed all kinds of ways of navigating those situations. One, by not digging, like not engaging or trying to go further, but know that if somebody like me is fascinated by you or interested in what you have to say, we're going to ask, because all these pieces of information that we get are filed away, especially if you're doing some that if we find it interesting, we are going to listen. We find it interesting, we are going to want to know more. And there's nothing funnier than somebody wanting to know more about you, about what you do, about why you think something is the way it is. Help me understand. And when I say help me understand, I literally mean that. I'm not asking you to change my mind necessarily, but but give me the logic that will make sense to me. And sometimes it don't make sense to me. And when I realize that you are unable to answer me in that way, that's going to make me say, oh, okay. I lose interest 100%. I don't no longer care. I don't know if you've experienced anybody like that. If you have, I hope you are gentle with them. I hope you understand that they are not doing it to be feisty. They're not doing it to be intrusive. I don't know where feisty came from. Feisty is a word that Jamaicans use to mean rude. They're not being rude. They are or intrusive. They genuinely do want to know. We genuinely do want to know. And it makes it interesting to think about how you evolve over time as somebody in these times, with the advent of social media and all that you have access to, all the information that you have access to, and being able to determine people's true intentions. But also relationships are hard, and parasocial relationships, that's when you don't even know people but you feel like you know them because you've been following their journey online, and they're engaging online. I find parasocial relationships to be an interesting thing, especially when people feel entitled to know about others when they do not know them. They're not friends, they just know of them because of the things they share. And it's so fascinating to me how people feel like because they follow you or because they have commented and maybe you responded, then you are obligated to explain yourself to them or to report to them about anything. That is so fascinating. It's wild to me that people think that. Because it makes it a dangerous place. And I can understand why people do not want to expose themselves to that. I can understand why I don't want to expose myself to that. Being here on YouTube is one of those situations. Like, I have the fear of people coming on my YouTube channel and making comments. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm of the age where you comment some shit and you're going to get it back, because if you play stupid games, you are going to win. like prizes. And I can also delete the comments, but I'm not going to, because it's engagement for me that I will utilize. So I used to fear that, but now I'm like, somebody comments, nobody's really like, on the one hand, it's a good thing that nobody's commenting. On the other hand, why are people not commenting? And I have to go and analyze that. You know, am I not sharing an interesting enough topic? There are so many folks who have launched YouTubes or accidentally became full-time YouTubers, and they're sharing all these tips, and they're great. And they found out they've grown a lot, or the experience has taught them this and X, Y, and Z. And I get that. But sometimes I think trying to remember all of these things, you need to do X, Y, Z. You need to make sure you tell a story. You need to provide a hook. You need to, you know, make sure that they, you know, they stay for the first however many minutes. And if people need to watch the whole thing, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, and I could follow somebody's formula to the T, and if it doesn't feel like me, and because it doesn't feel like me, you don't get the real me. You don't get that I'm excited about it. You don't get, it seems like I'm reading from a script as opposed to knowing what I'm talking about. That's the problem I have with a lot of the advice. Not that the advice is wrong. It's that when I try to follow a formula, that's the moment I lose the authenticity, at least for me. Because here I am, this is video number 67, and while I thought I had something figured out as an offer, it's been a complete flop thus far. So now I'm back to the drawing board, figuring out where do I go with this channel to offer a new thing to somebody trying to change the way they eat. Is that even what I continue to offer? You know, do people care about me building meals? Do people care about, you know, making sure that they have a way to, you know, use up the food that they have in the house? Do people care, or do people just want recipes? Because that's the other thing. People go on recipe blogs and talk about, just give me the blinking recipe. People come on YouTube and they watch videos about the recipes. And if you don't have the ingredients in the caption, folks are like, no, why don't you have the recipe in the caption? You much work it take? Like I said, the audacity of people to think you owe them things. That said, yes, I want you to watch my videos. Yes, I want to put out videos about food. But how many recipe videos do you need to see? Do you need to see one more healthy chicken recipe? Do you? I am certain you have 50 million of them you can look for. And lots of them are the same. I don't particularly think my chicken recipe is going to be that different. I don't think my chicken recipe is going to give you anything that other recipes haven't, other than maybe my use of Jamaican spices or spices typical to Jamaican cooking, or maybe a hack that I have. But do people want to see that? Do you want to see that? I'm still trying to figure out what it is that you want to see when you come on YouTube. That's what I'm here for. So here I am sharing with you the honest truth that I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway. And you have folks who talk about, well, consistency, you should be consistent. But if you're consistent and you're not responding to what the analytics tell you, what the views tell you, then you're wasting your time. And on the one hand, I agree. Yeah, if the data gives clues, but also the data is giving you clues for things that you don't particularly want to do. For example, I do not care about sharing a brand new recipe. What I care about is sharing meal ideas. So I am going to share about meal ideas. How I talk about meal ideas begin with sharing what I think balanced meals look like and how I arrived there, because that's how I think. Do my videos reflect that people want to see the same thing or want to hear about that? Unfortunately, they do not. So I have to change my strategy. But it takes work. And I have to set time aside to create those videos. Even though I've said to myself, if I don't have to create a brand new video except for these talking head ones, I have hard drives full of videos that have not been used that I can share. So I will continue to do those. They are the ugliest videos you will find. Because at the time I recorded them, they've been recorded maybe 2-3 years ago. And I didn't post them. I didn't take action on them. And now I'm ready to take action on them. I have no idea where they will go. I have no idea if people will watch them. But since people want recipes, I am going to put out recipes. And I will also talk about the fact that AI is something that I use. And the way I use AI for brainstorming, certainly, organized thoughts is another way that I utilize AI, because I want to understand what we are working with. And yes, there are many concerns about AI and the damage it's causing, and all the issues that occur with AI. And on the one hand, I agree that there are some problematic things about AI. But there's also, I think, power in knowing what you're dealing with. And that's the stance I'm taking. I'm choosing to understand the landscape rather than just simply saying I am anti-AI and I'm never using it, and so I'm not open to understanding what it's doing, what it looks like, how it shows up, how to recognize it, because that is the truth. It is here and we have to know what it is doing. Yes, the ethical issues around it, notwithstanding the ethical issues around it, but I'm just not going to do the fear-mongering thing with AI. It serves no purpose. I'm going to educate myself about it, and with those who I have conversations, I will do the same. Invite questions or ask questions, what they understand of how they're using it. And I will agree, those AI generated flyers, ugh, especially the food photos that people generate with AI, I'm sorry, not the best. There are ways to utilize AI to edit, but some of the slop that I see is unbelievable. So yeah, there are certain things about AI that I'm not a fan of, but I'm not going to dismiss that it exists. All of that to say that the content that I put out here is very much me, but I also utilize AI to, like I said, help me brainstorm, help me organize my thoughts, because if I don't do that, I'm forever going to be rambling. Especially knowing what I know, or especially now that we have identified where my issues lie as far as me coming on and rambling, and why that is, and where my thoughts, what happens with my thoughts. It is important for me to have some kind of guardrail. So AI will help me do that in not all instances, but a lot of the time. And maybe I could utilize it to help me with this batch creating thing. But I'm not there yet, because batch content creation for me sounds as terrible as editing videos. I don't mind producing them, I just hate editing them. The editing portion takes a lot, more so than the actual filming, because editing requires paying attention to details, which is why when I put out this particular talking head, I do as little editing as I possibly can, because you're going to get the raw filtered thing. And this is me practicing showing up in that way so that I can get better at speaking, talking head. I can get better at organizing my thoughts on the spot. I get better at expressing it so that it's understood, so that I'm not rambling, so that my thoughts are connected, or my points are connected rather. So yeah, use it or don't use it, but understand it is my advice where AI is concerned. And I think that is where I am going to end tonight's rant slash ramble slash, I don't know. Thank you for watching. I hope you found some of this, if not any part of this. If you have found it enlightening, helpful, inspirational, I don't care. If you found any of that and it spoke to you, I would really love for you to let me know in the comments. Share something that makes me feel like I'm not the only person going through this. Are you on YouTube? What do you like to watch on YouTube? Are you watching these types of videos? Or am I doing something wrong when I'm sharing my thoughts? I'm sharing what's happening with me. And I don't know, maybe you see yourself in that, or you just want how-to videos. You just want me to tell you what you need to be doing, or I provide you with, another recipe. I would really love to know. But share this, and I'm going to tell you to share all my videos. I don't care what it is. But in addition to that, go ahead and join my weekly newsletter, The Weekly Dose, where I share nourishing insights for your kitchen and your life. I am focused on nourishing you, and this is part of nourishment too, being able to express myself about the things that aren't necessarily food, but the things that impact me and how I show up in talking about food. See ya.